Hello and welcome to Out of Spec Motoring. Now, obviously, I am not Kyle, but my name is Vinny and I am one of the video editors for the Out of Spec Studios family of channels. That, of course, includes Out of Spec Motoring, Out of Spec Reviews, and One Lap, just to name a few. You're probably wondering why it's me in front of the camera today and not Kyle. Well, today we're going to be bringing you a review of the automotive service Turo, as well as documenting our experience with Turo on a road trip from Atlanta, Georgia to Tampa Bay during a holiday week. So stay tuned as we get into a really awesome video, another road trip video in a Tesla Model 3. Before we get into the video, I want to encourage you to check out some of the other channels a part of the Out of Spec Studios family. The first is One Lap, and One Lap is an awesome channel. It's where Kyle rips a different type of car around the racetrack. The way he says it is, if it has four wheels, it gets a lap, and it does not disappoint. We keep the lap times consistent. We post them every week on Mondays normally, so check out One Lap for those videos. The other channel I encourage you to check out is Out of Spec Reviews. This is one of the fastest growing auto review channels on YouTube. It is a phenomenal resource for new car reviews, and Kyle has done a phenomenal job with the team creating this channel on the beautiful backdrop of their new home in Colorado. Let me tell you, this is a channel you want to check out. If you're an Out of Spec Motoring fan and enjoy watching the content that we work so hard to put out, I encourage you to go check out Out of Spec Reviews. The Colorado backdrop, as I said, is beautiful. The cars are fantastic, and we are so excited for the growth of that channel. So with all that being said, let's get into the origin of this video. It stems from a phone call that Kyle and I had a few months back when I had first started working with Out of Spec. You see, I was going to be taking a road trip with my wife and two dogs down to Florida for the Thanksgiving holiday. Our daily driver is a Chevy Tahoe, and most would agree it's a great road tripping vehicle. It's big, it's luxurious, and you could fill it up once and get to your destination. So I had mentioned to Kyle that we've actually been talking about getting a Model 3 to supplement for the gas usage on the Tahoe and for it to become my daily driver. And he loved the idea of me doing a road trip with his Model 3 so we could fully experience what him and Alyssa experience when they do their road trips. He offered up his Model 3, but the only problem was that he was going to be in Colorado and I'm in Atlanta. So if I was going to take my Tahoe to him in Colorado and get the Model 3 and conduct the road trip, it was going to result in me having to drive well over 100 hours, and that also accounts for all the charging. It was crazy, and it was a no-brainer to scratch that off the list. Kyle then mentioned Turo, and I had heard of Turo before. What Turo is basically the Airbnb of the automotive world. It's a great website that allows you to rent cars of different makes and different models and different sizes to the general public. So if you own a vehicle, you can actually rent that vehicle on Turo. It kind of takes out the middleman of the awkward exchanges at the rental car counter, and it allows you to rent different cars that might not be available at a big box rental car store. Perfect example would be if you just need a truck for an afternoon to move some furniture, you could go on Turo and find someone maybe even in your neighborhood that rents a truck. It's a really, really smooth process. It's also great for someone who wants to buy a Tesla because normally you can't take a Tesla and test drive it for a day or even a couple of days at that point. So basically what you could do is you could get on Turo, and then from there you could rent a Tesla for a couple of days. There are plenty of Teslas on Turo, and we really wanted to find one that would fit the bill for us. What would that bill be? Well, we needed to find a Turo that would allow us to have the amount of mileage we needed for our road trip. We needed to have a Tesla that would allow pets, since we would be bringing our two dogs. And we wanted to make sure that supercharging was included or somewhat supplemented in the cost. We gave ourselves a budget, and we wanted to stay within that budget of $100 or so. So, with all that being said, It was quite the process, but Turo does a great job of making sure that you are finding exactly what you need. When you look at the website, it's really simple. You type in where you want to pick the car up or the area you pick the car up in. You type in your dates and the time of pickup and return, and then a bunch of cars pop up on the screen. From there, you can set the filters, such as what kind of hosts they are, the features where you could actually find pet-friendly accommodation, or GPS, child seats, blind spot monitoring, any feature you would really want. There is even an Apple CarPlay function in here, which is really cool. You can then select if you want a hybrid or electric car. You could select the make and the model. You can select basically anything, including the color. Turo really makes it easy to find the exact car you want for the length of time you want it. So when we did our initial search, we scrolled down and we found a Tesla. There was the Tesla, and then of course you have the model. There's Model 3s, S's, X, Y's, and Roadsters. We wanted a Model 3 because we wanted to stay consistent for what we thought we might buy sometime. Now, obviously, this was a few months back, but if you look right here, there are plenty of Teslas that are available for rent. And then from there, you can select the amount of miles that's included on the rental. And for us, we needed to include the pet-friendly option. Now, that proved to be a little troublesome. Why exactly? Well, because in Atlanta, when we were renting a Tesla, there were only two options when it came to unlimited mileage, which would cover our full trip and driving in between that trip, and pet-friendly options. There is no way to filter out the supercharging options. It might be something that Turo can add on in the future for the electric car options, perhaps. But what we found was there was only two options that included unlimited mileage and pet-friendly in the Atlanta area at the time we were renting. The first was a Model Y, and it was actually right down the road from us in north of Atlanta, and we were really excited about maybe renting a Model Y until we saw the price. It required a $750 deposit, and the price was well over $1,200. It just didn't make sense for us to rent a Model Y at that price point, and we never even thought about renting a Model Y, but it was pet friendly and it was an option for us. The other was a Model 3. It was reasonably priced, but it only included 800 miles. If we wanted to up it to unlimited mileage, it was going to cost us an additional $250. And to be completely honest, we thought about it, but it just did not make sense in the long run to pay that premium to add 400 miles to the trip. Now, in theory, you could reach out to the owner of the car and ask if they would be willing to maybe make an exception or if they would be willing to work with us. But Turo does not allow that. And I think that is the number one problem I experienced with Turo, and that I would change if I could. Turo does not allow you to communicate with the renter beforehand. Now, maybe that's because they don't want you to harass them or try to lowball them on cost. Turo really focuses on a fixed cost pricing model. But it would be really nice if you could coordinate with someone on Turo so you could perhaps get everything sorted out on the front end. You have to book the trip before you're able to communicate with the owner of the car. So we struck out because we weren't going to pay the premium. We couldn't communicate with the owner, and I didn't want to dish out all the money to only have to get a refund if the owner said they weren't willing to work with us. So I started expanding the search, if you will. I expanded north to even up into Chattanooga, Tennessee, and couldn't find anything that really fit what we needed. I then expanded west. And once I did that, roughly 150 miles away from my driveway, we found the Tesla that would end up being the Tesla used for this video. Now, this is definitely a one-off in that sense. Most of the time, if you just want to rent a Tesla on Turo, you can easily do that in your area. And I want to keep that clear as we do this review of Turo. But before I give you my full thoughts on how my experience was, I want to tell you about the Tesla we ended up picking. Now, in Cullman, Alabama, in the middle of nowhere, if you will, a great little town in Alabama, we found a beautiful 2020 Tesla Model 3 long range with full self-driving. I'm not kidding. In the middle of nowhere, there was this gem. I even asked the renter when I got to the location if he even sees a lot of Teslas around there, and he laughed and he said no, he did not. He was fairly close to the Oxford, Alabama Supercharger and in vicinity for me to get back without really having to charge. But nonetheless, it was still pretty far away. But this was an incredible Tesla. Take a look at his page. This Tesla is chrome deleted, as you can tell, and it really was a cool experience because when I was supercharging, I actually was asked if it was a 2021 refresh. It was not, but it was cool to be asked that question while we were supercharging on our trip. The Tesla is beautiful inside and out. He has done a great job of keeping it immaculately clean, and he does a great job of communicating with his customers. And I don't want to hesitate anymore. I want to plug this wonderful Tesla owner. Danny was the owner of this Tesla, and he is still available for rent on Turo, for his car on Turo. Now, obviously, his stipulations and his accommodations may change as time goes on, but he offered us unlimited supercharging, unlimited mileage, and he was pet friendly. If you look at his page, he has a 5-star review. He's in Coleman, Alabama, and as you can see, there is single day mileage is 500 miles, but multi-days get unlimited mileage, which is still the case. And for single day renters, Tesla superchargers are available for an additional fee, but for multi-day trips, he includes it. He also mentions in here that it's perfect for road trips. So this was the Tesla that seemed too good to be true for us. And like I said, we booked this car. It was a no-brainer. So after we booked the car, I messaged Danny and I said, hey, I'm part of a YouTube channel called Out of Spec Studios. I was going to be using this for a video. Would you mind if we gave you a plug? And he was super accommodating. He said, of course, that would be great. But the rules were the rules. He was super accommodating for us to do a road trip. We were transparent with him and he was transparent with us. And we were thrilled to be working with him. His car is beautiful. On the inside, he has a sun guard on the first part of the sunroof to keep the sun out. And he also has a swivel mount on his Model 3 screen, something I had never seen before. He said him and his son installed it in only 30 minutes. He also did the chrome delete on the entire car. He communicated with us throughout the entire process. If I had any questions whatsoever, he replied instantly. I can't recommend Danny enough for a Tesla rental. If you're in the Alabama area and want to rent a Tesla, or you're in the Atlanta area like me and want to drive out and rent a Tesla, reach out to Danny, check out his page. It will be in the description, and you might find a great experience like we did. Now, we drove out to Coleman, Alabama. It was actually just myself. Danny was nice enough to let us keep the Tahoe in his garage, and we took the Tesla back to Atlanta, and we did a road trip. So before we get into the road trip, I want to go over my full experience with Turo. First off, Turo is really easy to use. It's an easy to use website. It's really nice. It's really functional. And I really think they've come a long way since Turo was released a few years back. What I would change about Turo is what I mentioned earlier. I would really like to see Turo add a messaging function on the front end. I get they're trying to protect themselves and try to protect anyone from doing business with a renter, off of Turo, if you will. But they are other than that, the website is great. The insurance options I feel like are really affordable and comparable to a regular rental car company. And overall, I think that you really can find a fun experience using Turo. I would recommend it to anyone who wants to buy a Tesla and wants to test drive it first. I think that is what it caters to in the Tesla community. It's a cool car, people want to drive them, and they want a great experience. Another thing I really didn't love about Turo is that when you get into a performance Model 3 or a long range Model 3, it gets into what's called the Super Deluxe class. That means you have to be at least 30 years of age to rent the car, and you also have to put a deposit down if you're under the age of 30 years old. It is normally $750. If you put in your own insurance information, you can actually get that deposit down to $500, but that's part of their Super Deluxe classification, and I noticed it was only on long range and performance Model 3s. Now, if you're over the age of 30, disregard it. For me, it was that was the case. I didn't have to worry about it. But if you're under the age of 30, where you're 25, you can rent a car from anywhere. You can still rent the car, but it's going to require you to obviously have to pay more in a deposit. The other thing that is different with Turo, unlike, any other rental car company, is that you have to pay upfront. When you book the car, you are expected to pay fully upfront. Now, for a lot of folks, they don't want to pay until they go pick up the car, and I can understand that. If that's the case for you, maybe want to stick with a traditional rental car company. Now, keep this in mind. Rental car companies do not rent Model 3s in most cases, only Model S's, and in some instances, Model X's. Those are the only two types of rental cars I've seen. Leave me a comment down below if you have seen a Model 3 offered by a big rental car retailer, because I looked everywhere and I'm telling you, I could not find a Model 3 for rent. Again, like I said, I think it's just for the weekend people that want to have a car for a couple of days. You can rent by the week, and in some instances I saw you can rent by the month, but it's just so fiscally incomprehensible unless you are someone who's coming in from out of the country, or you just need it for a month for some weird reason. You're out of town and you just want a car to get around in. It is a good option. It also is a great option if you want a lot of features in a particular car and a rental car won't offer you that. That might also suffice. So overall, great experience with Turo. Great experience with Danny. Again, his link is in the description if you want to check out his Turo page. And, I really was pleased with our experience. So stay tuned, because we're going to get into an overview of our road trip. It's going to be a brief overview of how we traveled in Danny's Tesla Model 3 long range with full self-driving, might I add, from Atlanta to Tampa. So coming up, that is what we're going to get into. But first, I want to just say one last time, check out Turo.com for a Tesla rental. It was a great experience for us. I think it would be for you too. All right. You now join us inside the car, where at first glance, this looks like a standard Model 3. It's beautiful as always, and it's really cool. He's installed this sunshade that a lot of owners have opted for. It just fits right into place. There's no added clips. There's no added tools that need to be used for this. It just fits right into place. And the one thing I do want to point out in this interior is super cool. At first glance, this looks like a normal Model 3 screen. Until I do this. Check that out. How cool is this? This is a swivel mount that Danny and his son installed, and it's really cool. He said it only took 30 minutes to install it with his son, and it allows the passenger to have access to the screen if they want to check something out while you're driving, or if you want to be in the Model S style, you have the screen pointed right at you while you're driving. I really like it. When I was driving the car for the first few minutes, I put it just standard tilted towards me, and it doesn't make a huge difference, but it is really nice to be able to kind of set your Model 3 apart from the others. The interior is beautiful, and it is such a good car. It is so obvious to why this car is so popular and why it is rented heavily on Turo. So when I left Coleman, Alabama, I had a roughly 200 miles to get back safely. I went ahead and topped off in Birmingham, Alabama, and then gave myself a good bit of battery for the morning in Atlanta, Georgia at the Atlantic Station Supercharger. Both great superchargers, especially the Birmingham Supercharger, backs up to a Target. So many food options around there. Really a cool little supercharger. And once I got back, I plugged it in just to our normal wall outlet, a 120 outlet. That was all provided to me from Danny in the car, and wanted to make sure that we would have enough to get to our first stop for our road trip. And where was that first stop? Well, we were leaving from Cumming, Georgia, driving down to Macon. Now, Macon has 2 superchargers. Weirdly enough, when you travel in a Tesla down the I-75 corridor, you don't get on I-475. That's kind of a cut through, a 15-mile cut through. My entire life, I have taken 475, so not doing that was kind of funny. The first supercharger we stopped at was the Macon, Georgia Supercharger, one of the 2 that are in Macon. When we arrived, there were no Teslas there, which was kind of nice. We had the whole supercharger to ourselves. Within the 20-minute time frame that we were there, about 2 other Teslas did show up, but they were on the total opposite side of us, so there was no power being taken away from our stall, and it was a nice quick stop in Macon. After charging there for roughly 20 minutes, we let the dogs stretch their legs and they were getting used to their little backseat hangout spot. We were back in the car and we were off. From there, we drove to Tifton, Georgia. Now, the exit at Tifton, Georgia is very congested. There's a brand new Chick-fil-A, but you have to cross a main road to get there. So you have access to a gas station Wendy's if you walk far enough to get to it. And you also have access to a Starbucks. Unfortunately for us, the Starbucks was only doing drive-through, so I wasn't able to get any kind of drink there, but there is a giant field at that supercharger where someone was actually flying a remote control helicopter that they were in the Tesla next to us. This supercharger was packed. I'm talking full to the gills. There was never a wait, but when we arrived, we were lucky enough to get the last spot at that supercharger. It was not the best supercharger, I'd say. It's okay. It's definitely kind of harder to get to. You get off the exit and you have to go through a couple parking lots, but it is tucked back and it backs up to actually the on-ramp to I-75. And there is a hotel right next to it. So if you happen to ever need a place to stay off I-75, that Tifton, Georgia supercharger would be just fine. And it would be a great spot for you to just get a quick charge and go to sleep. From there, we were off once again, and let me tell you, the drive on the day before Thanksgiving is nothing but stressful, but my goodness, when you're used to driving a big old SUV with just regular cruise control, you expect that stress. This was the first time I ever was in a Tesla with full self-driving. Nonetheless, the Autopilot is absolutely phenomenal. When you navigate on Autopilot, it gives you those suggestions for lane changes, and I wasn't trying to mess with too many settings, even though Danny was nice enough to let me have my own profile in the car. When I used to hear the phrase, "it takes the stress out of driving," I really didn't understand what it meant, but I could kind of understand the concept, if you will. No, 100% it takes the stress out of driving. What a smooth drive in that car. It was thrilling. It was so great. I see why so many folks love these cars. And for someone who's just been in it a few times and driven a couple not too often, it was absolutely phenomenal. I keep saying it's phenomenal because it is. It's such a great car. So when we were driving down I-75, it was very congested. We got to Ocala, Florida, and no joke, at one point there were 6 accidents. 6 accidents. I'm not kidding. But before that, we had to stop at another supercharger. Now, this is where we got lucky, and this is where I want to give you a little tip if you were traveling down I-75. The supercharger it directed me to was the Gainesville, Florida supercharger. Why? Well, it's right off the highway. It's a big stall. It's, I believe it's a 150 kilowatt hour supercharger, but it was always full. When we were checking the route along the way, every time we click on it, it would either be 1 stall available or it would be no stalls available. It was full. But about 20 miles south of that, there's the Lake City Supercharger. It's about 2 miles off the exit in Lake City, Florida. And I kept glancing at it thinking, well, would it fill up? And the most it ever did was have 2 or so cars out of the 8 stalls that are there. I believe it's 8 stalls. And we really were thinking to ourselves, okay, is this the better supercharger? It was a 150 as well, and it was just a little bit off the exit. There was a Starbucks sort of near it that we could run through. The Gainesville, Florida Supercharger, I'm sure is great. It's right off the exit. I'm not sure what all backs up to that, but we ended up stopping at the Lake City Supercharger. Little grassy area around there. It actually is in a kind of a tucked away area. You kind of don't really realize it's there, but it's there, and it actually has a Firehouse Subs right next to it. There's a Moe's, I believe, right next to it as well. It's not the prettiest supercharger you've ever seen. There's kind of some dumpsters right there, and there was actually a lot of trash on the ground around there. So, you know, who knows? And maybe it was just an off day, but I noticed that. It's not in the most populated area, so if it's late at night and you're a little hesitant of being in a big populated area at a supercharger, not that there's any reason to be worrisome at that supercharger, you might want to keep that in mind as it's not really in the open. There's a Walmart nearby, but it's not in walking distance really. It's really just catered to, I think, be an auxiliary to that Gainesville, Florida supercharger. The trip itself was smooth, I would say. It was a holiday weekend, which begs the question, how was road tripping in a Tesla on a holiday weekend? Well, overall, it was great. It is such a joy to see so many Tesla owners traveling. I know that this time of year is always crazy, and especially this year since we are in a pandemic. Nonetheless, with all the safety precautions in place and getting tested before our trip and doing all the right things to ensure that we quarantined before because we hadn't seen family in a long time, it was still very crowded for a holiday weekend. Maybe that's because a lot of folks were not flying, or maybe that's because a lot of people just wanted to get out. And in Florida, there's not a lot of restrictions, but Florida was crowded. And once we hit that Ocala, Florida area, oh my gosh, it was tough. It kind of made me wish that we got off somewhere else and charged for a little bit longer. We were detoured about 3 times off of I-75, and to be completely honest, I kind of got sick of filming. And by the time we really got back onto the highway, it was already dark. We couldn't believe it. We made okay time. Now, normally with this trip on a normal weekend, when we've done it, it's about 8 hours. We stop once or twice, and with the dogs especially, we just go ahead and stop maybe 3 times, let them use the bathroom. But overall, we added about an hour and a half to our trip doing the Tesla. And overall, I would say this road trip was a success. We were able to get a really good Tesla Model 3. We were able to see some really cool superchargers. We were able to see other Tesla owners masked up, fighting off this pandemic, trying to enjoy their vacation. And it was a really fun experience. This is definitely not the traditional road trip video you would see that Kyle and Alyssa are so good at doing. But what this was is someone who wanted to experience a Tesla Model 3 road trip and found a resource to do so. So if you are someone who wants to do that, it's possible. It's possible to rent a Tesla and go on a road trip. It's possible to do that any day of the week. Check out Turo, get on 75, and go explore. Go find out how great owning a Tesla really is. It's been a pleasure to bring you this video. It's been a pleasure to get to be in front of the camera. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe to Out of Spec Motoring and the other Out of Spec Studio channels I mentioned earlier, which were, of course, One Lap and Out of Spec Reviews. And stay tuned for more awesome content from all of these channels. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a safe and relaxing holiday season. We'll be back with more videos, of course. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.